Before we dig in, a quick thank you to the sponsors ready to grow with the Soil Sisters. Tejas Tonic is the official beverage of the Texas Soil Sisters. We especially love that the hemp for Tejas Tonic is organically farmed in the Texas Hill Country, with farms in both Dripping Springs and Lukenbach, Texas. The Soil Sisters podcast is powered by B&P Electric. Whether you're building, remodeling, installing low-voltage landscape lighting, or in need of an inspection, B&P is your Central Texas electrical contractor. Find links to our sponsors in the podcast show notes or head over to txsoilsisters.co. You're listening to the Soil Sisters podcast, where we dig in on family farming and ranching, regenerative agriculture, healthy living, and planting seeds in our community. We invite you to listen, subscribe, and grow with the Soil Sisters. Hi, y'all. I'm Joanna Newting, joined by my blood, soul, and soil sister, Crystal. Welcome to the show.
Hello, sister. I'm very excited for today's show.
I know we are wrapping up our Southern Family Farmers and Food Systems Conference series with Judith McGeary. She is the executive director and founder of FARFA. She is a farmer, an attorney, a force of nature, and a local foods advocate. And we have been thrilled to be under Judith's wing this session, I should say. So, Judith, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure getting to know y'all this year.
Oh my gosh, you as well. We have been big Judith McGeary fans since we learned about FARFA 3 years ago. And you've been on our list of folks we want to have on the show, and you're one of the busiest folks we know in agriculture. So thank you for taking the time with us today.
Yes, the term fearless leader is what I think of when I think of you. And I appreciate your attitude and the way that you approach things, and just the way that you're supporting people, supporting farmers, and it means everything. So thank you.
Thank you both.
So Judith left her law practice 19 years ago to found the Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance. Her goal was to be the voice of independent farmers and ranchers. And as Crystal and I can attest, she is doing that. So I wanted to start our conversation off with you sharing with us what's the mission of FARFA and what exactly does the organization do?
So FARFA advocates for small farmers and local food producers. We promote common sense policies to promote local diversified food systems. And what that really boils down to is that we want a system, a government policy, regulatory system that puts power back in the hands of local communities and that supports us in having independent producers who are able to farm in ways that are good for the environment, good for human health, and good for their economic bottom line, and make a fair living doing so.
So what was your catalyst to make such a major life change 19 years ago?
Well, to be honest, I didn't realize it was a major life change at the time. I candidly had no idea what I was getting myself into. So at the time, I was studying because I wanted to become a consultant, really, and help farmers transition to what we would now call regenerative. Back then, we called it sustainable. And I was juggling that with a continuing legal career to pay the bills and a government program called the National Animal Identification System, or NAIS, came across my radar. And as I dug into it, it was this plan to electronically tag and track every livestock animal in the country. And it sounded like fiction at first. I mean, honestly, I thought it was kind of like this internet rumor. And then I started reading the actual government documents. This is what I did as an attorney who worked with agencies and looked at what the agencies were proposing. And the more I dug, the more it became very apparent that this was a program that had been designed by and for the largest agribusinesses and meat packer interests. And it was going to be absolutely devastating to small-scale livestock producers. The vast majority of small-scale livestock producers simply would not be able to comply with it. and would either go out of business or be running it illegally, hoping no one caught them. And so again, in great naivete, I started talking to legislators, and one of them offered to introduce a bill to roll the program back. And I took a 6-month leave of absence from the law firm, thinking that I could have it all nicely wrapped up in that time period. And 3 years later, my law firm called me and said, if you're not coming back, could you please empty out your office, because we could really use the space back. So yeah, this is my community. And I got into regenerative agriculture. The reason I was studying to become a consultant is because it holds such amazing promise, where it's where we can do things that are good for the environment and for human health and for small businesses and for wildlife and biodiversity, all at the same time. And it was just unacceptable to stand by and watch the big meat packers crush that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds very much like the Carnegie, the JP Morgan, the Rockefeller system of things, like buying all the railroads and taking all the money and having just a few of them convince the rest of them that they didn't have any power. So then they bought them all and made a conglomerate. And so you literally have interrupted that. And I thank you, because there were a lot of us that weren't even able to pay attention back then. You know what I'm saying? We've all lived, you just happened to be in the place where you caught that and were in your point in your life and your career and all the things to understand the implications of what happened. And so thank you so much for seeing that and giving the rest of your, the next 3 years and then 16 after that till today.
and that comparison is very apt. And there's a lot of things we need to learn from that period in history. The reason there was such the populist antitrust movement. When I say populist, I mean old style populism, which is about the interests of the average person. It's not right wing or left wing. Populism is about the interests of the average person on the ground. The reason that the populist movement in the early 1900s pushed and got antitrust law instituted was the recognition that when as a society we have these massive companies and this consolidation of economic power in the hands of a few, it does two things. One is the average person gets hurt. The average person loses horribly. And it leads to political power. Consolidation of economic power also means consolidation of political power. And fundamentally, antitrust law is not about let's keep consumer prices low. It's about making sure that we have a democratic system that can work and functioning free markets that can actually function as they are meant to. And we need some good old-fashioned trust busting again. We need, yes. And I think people are becoming more aware of it. People are seeing how much every sector of our economy and our lives have become consolidated into the hands of a few.
As Austin Frerick put very boldly and clearly in his book, Barons.
Which, thank you, by the way, for being the person that introduced us to Austin and his work. I mean, I have been preaching the gospel of that book ever since I read it, and just saying, if you eat food, you need to read this book. This is required reading for every citizen, I believe, so that we can think about things from the perspective that they're thinking about them, so that we can now make different choices to vote with our dollar. Because people say that a lot, like vote with your dollar, but when you understand what it means when you're making that decision, it's way more impactful.
I'm going to push back on you, and I'm going to say, yes, it's both way more impactful, but also way less impactful than people think, because it is vital. If we don't spend our money with the independent producers, first of all, independent producers won't be there. You can't build a different economic system if you don't economically support the independent businesses. And every dollar is a choice between, does it go into the pockets of the big companies or does it go into the pockets of a small independent producer? And that's an incredibly, incredibly important choice for every penny that matters. And by itself, it will not and cannot change the system because the system is rigged. So, I mean, I think you guys probably know this already. I doubt I'm saying anything you don't know, but I once asked at our conference years ago, how many people who'd heard about government subsidies thought that the food that they were buying at the farmers market wasn't subsidized. And, most hands went up. Oh, yeah, there aren't subsidies for our small farmers. And I was like, wrong. I said, the food is subsidized, not by the government, but by the farmers. Because the vast majority of the farmers who are selling at farmers markets, who are selling local regenerative food, despite the prices that they're charging, which appear quite high, are subsidizing it either by living under the poverty line, having a spouse or partner that works off the farm, they themselves working off the farm, or digging into their retirement savings from a previous career. There's a fraction of them that are actually making a living. And so when we say buy from these local farmers, absolutely, we need to. But how are we going to shift the system when all you're doing is not all you're doing, but fundamentally they can't grow, they can't become a significant part of the market because of the way the markets are set up and the regulations are set up.
Yes. And that's part of what I mean by everyone needing to read this book, is because he's exposing how broken and rigged the system is and how it got that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Also, one of my favorite writers and thinkers in our movement.
So you're always busy with FARFA, but, especially during session, and now we're in, special session number 2. And let's also go ahead and state you're at the Texas State Capitol with FARFA, but you're also in DC. So you're working on both the state and national level. Let's talk a little bit about what FARFA has been focusing on and maybe some of the successes, and then we can transition into the things we need to do moving forward.
So I have to say I count my blessings that I'm not involved in the special sessions. The governor has not included anything on our issues on the call. So we get to stay out of the halls of the Capitol right now. And I'm proud for that. But this last regular session was exciting. I mean, we made immense progress, got through 2 major bills on regulatory reform that really open up new opportunities for small farmers and local food producers, not the farmers and the people doing value added, to produce and sell more food with fewer regulatory barriers, which makes it easier for them to do and more profitable. We also made huge progress on getting through a first of its kind bill to fund regenerative agriculture research at Texas universities. And this is huge. I mean, a few years ago, I'll go all the way back, to 2013 when we first ran a bill, and the bill sponsor was told that if the word organic was in it, if it mentioned the word organic in relation to agriculture, that the agribusiness groups would ensure that the chairs of the ag committees never allowed it a hearing. You could not use the word organic at the Capitol, period, end of statement. And here we are, and we run a bill to fund that defines regenerative agriculture, that talks about the principles of maintaining living cover on the soil and living roots and biodiversity, plant diversity in those words. And we got it through the House with a super majority vote from both parties. This is huge strides forward. And we're going to keep working on that. So Texas meets every other year in regular session. The sessions are wide open where you can bring any topic. And we're going to spend the next year between now and the next regular session really on 2 parallel efforts. One is educating the legislators and their staff more deeply on regenerative agriculture and the issues facing our farms. Because when they aren't in session, this will wait till after the specials. When they aren't in the middle of session, you have more time for a calm, in-depth discussion than you do when they're frantically trying to deal with thousands of bills. The other thing we're going to be doing is reaching back out to our farmers, our members, our allies, and saying, what's needed to move the needle? What do we need to do? Because we now have gotten 15 bills through the legislature with various reforms. Frankly, some of the reforms we got through this session were broader than I ever thought we would be able to, at least this session. Like I didn't think we'd make those wins. And so now it's time for some real analysis to go, okay, we have removed lots of barriers on local permitting, on information for small farmers, on permit fees, on commercial kitchen requirements. What are the things that will help farmers grow and increase this movement? What's the next step? We know where we want to end up. We want a system where there is scale-sensitive regulation across the board, where there is support for the services that regen farmers provide to their communities, where there's shared community infrastructure. Getting from point A to point B, there are lots of different paths. And what are the logical building blocks on that? And we're going to be spending this next year really reaching back out and doing an analysis of the lay of the land and talking with our allies to build that plan for the next session.
So when you're doing that, when you're having these brainstorm sessions and whatnot, who is involved in this process?
First and foremost, the farmers. That is one of the things about FARFA is we are a farmer-led group. It is not common in the policy world to have farmer-led. And that is vital because what we need are things that make the difference literally day to day to farmers' ability to be economically and ecologically sustainable. So we invite our farmers, our members, and other farmers. It's our members obviously are the people we first and foremost want to hear from, but we want to hear from any farmer willing to talk with us about what's needed. We also have lots of organizational allies, Small Producers Initiative, Sustainable Food Center, Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners, lots of different groups around the state, local and statewide, that we'll reach out to and ask, what are you hearing from your producers? What are you seeing? Particularly also, I think, from organizations that then start working with more of the middle of the supply chain. And like, what is it that we need to build capacity to be selling to institutions, to universities, to hospitals? What is it that we need to build a good wholesale system? One that doesn't simply replicate or end up in the same problems we have now, but that allows for more access to good, healthy foods through more channels. So we'll be talking to small retailers and local sourcing chefs and the people that are building out the full scope of the food system.
When we were talking about the successes, you mentioned having 2 bills that passed. One of them was the cottage food businesses and the increase in the benefits. So will you talk a little bit about that? Because we do have a lot of cottage food folks that listen to the show. So tell them what they have in store for them.
This really is amazing. So, prior to 2011, it was illegal to make any food in your house and sell it. All the people that would bake pies for the holidays and sell them to their local community, completely illegal. And we cracked open that door in 2011 with this itty bitty bit of bill that we had to fight like hell for, just to allow people to make baked goods and jams and jellies and sell it literally to the people who came to their house to buy it. That was version number 1 of the cottage food law. And then we expanded in 2013 and we expanded it in 2019. And this session hit what really is more appropriately termed a food freedom bill, the way a lot of people use these terms around the country. So now under this law, people can make food in their home kitchen and sell it directly to consumers at any location in the state. You can set up a table anywhere that you can get permission for it from the private landowner or what have you, or the private business. And you can sell any food except meat, poultry, or seafood products, low acid canned goods, because those pose a significant risk of botulism. Raw dairy, that's handled separately. It's not that you can't sell raw dairy, but it's just not under the cottage food law. Or ice and ice products and iced desserts, basically, frozen desserts. And other than that, you can sell up to $150,000 per year of these items directly to consumers. And really all you have to do is take a food handler certification course and do proper labeling so that consumers can make the choice. Do they want to buy a product that was made in a kitchen that is not inspected by the health department? And how to contact you, your name, your contact, so that they know what they're doing, what they're getting. So that's an amazing new set of opportunities. It opens up for hot vegetarian meals. People can do all kinds of healthy local foods and full meals, again, keeping it vegetarian because of meat is regulated in a different way. We are not anti-meat. We do a lot of livestock stuff. It's just meat has its own set of regulations that is incompatible with trying to do it as cottage foods. The other piece, which is both amazing in terms of the opportunities for producers, for cottage food producers, and is also so key to this question of building a system that works, is it opens the door for some wholesale sales. So the wholesale sales can only be of non-time or temperature controlled for safety foods. Basically, things that don't need to be refrigerated or kept hot, but could just be kept out on the counter and they wouldn't grow bacteria. But this is a wide range of foods. It's freeze-dried vegetables and fruits. It is, dry mixes. It's all, wide range of baked goods. Lots of different options there. And someone can make it in their home kitchen. The cottage food producer can make it in their home kitchen and then contract with what we're calling a cottage food vendor. And the cottage food vendor can then sell it at farmers markets or retail stores. So if the local cafe wants to carry your gluten-free cottage food item, they can. If the small mom and pop grocer wants to carry small farms jams and jellies under the cottage food law, they can. Again, proper signage, let people choose what they want to do. But this is about building, again, both the opportunities for the producers and the building blocks for a system that reaches more people with these foods.
Well, and I love it. We're grown-ups. We're humans. We know we can, I can make a choice. I can look at something. I can decide whether I'm going to eat it or not. I just think so many rules that they make us children and then they tax the heck out of us. They're taking all your money and not giving you any choices. It's so ridiculous. So anyway, I just think this is a complete no-brainer and I love it. I'm so excited.
Well, and so many of the things, it's fascinating when you watch the players, when you're really on the inside and you're watching the players, because so many of the industry groups that oppose these sorts of changes, that are like, no, this is terrible. It's not safe. You'll ruin the industry's reputation. They literally say, those are the words they often use. You'll ruin the industry's reputation. Also oppose clear labeling of things. So these are the same industry groups that will oppose country of origin labeling to let people know where their meat comes from. They vehemently oppose labeling of food additives. They oppose all of these things that would allow people to make informed choices while coming in and saying, no, we can't have these small farms having access to these markets. And that goes, Joanna, I think I skipped over, you'd also asked, federal issues. And we work a great deal on, labeling is a huge piece. Let's get clarity for people to choose who they want to buy from and what they're buying to make. This is a fundamental part of the free market. If you go back to Adam Smith's work on free markets, a fundamental provision is that consumers have the information to make their choices on, as well as actual access. So, changing regulations on meat processing, because there's so many people that want access to locally raised meat. I mean, the demand there is immense. And the regulations are so slanted towards the big guys that it is incredibly difficult and at best very expensive for small-scale producers to get small-scale processors to process the meat to sell to the consumers. We need
and the big guys.
The size.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Crystal.
Well, the big guys aren't even from this country. So it's crazy. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just was like, it is.
It's infuriating. It's absolutely, it's actually, I'll go back, the irony sometimes is mind-boggling. As I mentioned, the first issue that launched FARFA was this electronic tagging and tracking, where the meat packers, these big meat packers, and the industry groups, including groups like Farm Bureau, that's supposed to represent all farmers, were out there saying, we need to electronically tag each animal and track every movement they make. And in the next breath, when the subject of country of origin labeling would come up, they're like, no, it's too difficult to tell consumers what country their meat comes from. I'm like, wait a second. How does that work again? You can't track the cow crossing from Mexico to the US accurately through the meat process, but you want my cows that never leave the state to literally I have to file a report every single time they go anywhere. It doesn't make sense. It's about control. It's about what is in their financial best interest, end of statement. And they will completely mislead and use false statements and redirect attention in the most amazing ways.
Well, and that is because there is no real consequence to that. Whatever hand slap that they take is like them paying a quarter based on the amount of money that they're going to make to continue doing the thing that they're doing. And this is the story in the Barron's book and all the Barons that came before them, because they are making so much money that they can pay whatever little fine, but there is no real consequence. That's why we got to bust up the trust.
Exactly. There's no real consequence. And certainly whenever the money even approaches being a real consequence, they find a way to try to get around it. So we're seeing that right now. Bayer, which bought up Monsanto, is facing very significant court awards. I mean, this actually does rise to the level of being a serious amount of money for them because of the harm caused by glyphosate. So what do? They're in Congress very busily trying to protect themselves from liability so that all these people who've been harmed by glyphosate never see a dime. Liability shields are a travesty. And I say that as an attorney. I've never been involved in a tort lawsuit. I've never brought one. I'm not, I've never, I don't make a living doing this, so I can't be attacked as some profit-hungry tort lawyer. And tort lawyers, personal injury lawyers, there's some sleazy ambulance chasers out there. Of course there are. But fundamentally, they hold corporations responsible when the regulatory system fails. When we have situations where basically either because the company cheated, which happens absolutely, or there was simply some nice little industry capture where they got favorable treatment by the agency and they managed to make the rules work for them. Either way, the tort system is there so that when people get hurt and the companies have profited from it and knew about it, like we're not talking about like oops, but like where they were acting in ways that were reckless towards the public safety, that they have to pay for it. That's fundamental to ensuring that our system works. And when you come in as a multi-billion-dollar company and you say, oh, poor us, Congress has to protect us because, otherwise we won't be able to sell our pesticides anymore because we might be held responsible for it. The answer should be, well, then tough, don't sell them. Either they are safe enough that you can afford to absorb the costs when they do injure people, or they are so unsafe that we need to find alternatives and you should not be selling them. One or the other, people.
100%. So where is that section? Was it section 453 or something like that?
Section 453. So it's got put into, and I should know this, it's somewhere in the Interior Appropriations Bill, which has not come for a floor vote. And I don't remember if we know when it will. We're watching it and I should have that at my fingertips, but at this moment it's escaping me. And there's two layers of fight. So what they do is they try slipping these into appropriations bills, which by the way are pretty questionable. I mean, you can get by with a lot of stuff in an approps bill, but a full manufacturer liability shield in something that's supposed to be appropriations, I'd love to turn. I don't want it to pass, but should it pass, I think there's attorneys who are going to have a lot of fun challenging that one. Like, it's not appropriate.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
The almost bigger threat, because it would survive legal challenge, would be they want to get it into the Farm Bill. And should they do that, then it does pass muster. It won't be something that would be likely to be struck down by the courts. So we have got to keep them from getting it into the Farm Bill. And that's going to be a fight in the coming months.
Well, wonderful. Sounds like we have talking points already for when we are calling our representatives.
So, with that being said, let's talk about a term that I learned from you when Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance came onto our radar. We learned the term agtivism. We're at the point in the conversation now where it's like, all right, we know this needs to happen. Give us Agtivism 101.
First of all, shout out to Brad Stufflebeam of Home Sweet Farm, who was the one that coined that for us years ago. Agtivism 101 requires people to step back for a minute and stop assuming things about our government and start thinking about how the system works. So, and I say this without rose-colored glasses on. I'm about as cynical as they come, folks. But it does not serve us well when we make assumptions like they're all bought off, they only listen to the corporations because the corporations give them money, et cetera, et cetera. Because while there are certainly partial truths in that, again, no rose-colored glasses here, it's also true that those become self-fulfilling prophecies. Because when we step back and we say, oh, they're not going to listen to us. Well, of course they don't listen to us. You haven't shown up. This is what happens. This has not been helped by the sort of mass movement of nonprofits that have promulgated all of these click here to send a message to your legislators. And this was something I started looking into very early and talking with people who were serious civic engagement leaders. Those click here to send a message. If I'm teaching this in person, I'll ask everyone to please raise your hand. Who here has clicked on one of those things? And my hand goes up. Everybody pretty much everybody in the audience hand go up. And I'm like, okay, don't put it down yet. Okay, how many of you keep your hand up if you have not followed up to find out what happened and you have no idea what actually ended up happening on that issue? And almost everybody, including my hand, stays up. Well, guess what? The elected officials know this. They're not idiots. Their staff aren't stupid. They know that probably 90% of the people who signed that email petition are never going to look back to find out what happened. They're never going to follow that issue again. And so why should they act on it? What's in it for them? They want to respond. They want to keep their jobs. Yeah, absolutely. No shame to them. Who wants to get fired? Of course they want to get reelected. I don't want to get fired from my job. And so they're going to listen when it's clear that something really matters to people, that somebody's following this issue, that they're going to pay attention to what this legislator does, that they're going to remember it come November, that they're going to talk with their friends and their family about it. And when I say that, I start seeing a few people's eyes light up again when I do these in-person workshops. And I'm like, so wait a second. The way you do this is not to go in there and say, I'm going to remember this come November, or I'm never going to vote for you again, because no. Because guess what? Raise your hand, who likes to be threatened? Who responds well when someone issues a threat to them? Nobody. And again, these guys are human and their staffs are human. You can't expect them to respond well when that's what you do. So let's put these things together. They need to know that you are serious about this issue and you're going to keep paying attention to it, and it matters enough to you to vote on it and talk with your friends and community. And you need to convey that, make sure they know that without being threatening or nasty. How do we do this? We do it through real human contact. We do it through staying on top of an issue and calling at the right time when there's an action point. We do it through making it personal, not personal like, hey, I don't like you personal, but personal like, here's why it matters to me and my family, or I'm a farmer, or I'm a consumer, or my kids need these foods, or I've watched my health improve, or it is my top priority to buy food that's consistent with my values, whatever it is. and it can be 2 or 3 minutes, not long, not a sermon. Please, this is not your opportunity to lecture them for an hour, but 2 or 3 minutes that gives your story about why this is important to you. And all of a sudden, I can tell you that 2 or 3 minute phone call has the impact of probably 1,000 form letter signatures, because they know, and you've done it in a connective, positive way, that this is important. You're going to track it. You're going to talk it up, and they need to be paying attention to it. And we see it. We see just a handful of calls like this can really change how legislators act.
I will say that before Crystal and I joined FARFA as Texas Soil Sisters and started working with you, I never picked up the phone. Now I might go to their website and email them through their representative website, but until working with you and learning these things, I didn't pick up the phone. And now I always pick up the phone, and I do that first because it's actually faster.
Exactly. It is. And you're going to talk to some intern or whoever, a staffer that is, oftentimes, especially with our issues and the things that we're talking about, they agree with us and are on the same side of those issues. That's what we've noticed when we went in and talked to people in the Capitol, is that these younger people are very interested in these food issues and, farmers and natural food systems.
They are. And there's a couple of things, again, to sort of build on that. So first of all, these are the gatekeepers for information for their bosses. So they aren't going to necessarily dictate how their bosses vote. Like their boss, they may be on one side of it and their boss votes the other way. That's a reality. But they're going to be shaping the information their bosses hear. And to a large extent, we're giving them ammunition for that, to convince. We're trying to get them to lobby their bosses, and we're trying to give them the ammunition to do that. And I'll share, without obviously identifying, we're working on a federal bill on meat processing, and we're having this fantastic conversation with this congressional staffer who is absolutely, he's bought in. He is on our side. He's there. And what he said to me was, "Can you get me 5 or 6 constituent calls?" He goes, "I want to take this to my boss." He goes, "I think this is a great bill. I think, it fits his priorities. It fits, things he wants to do with reducing government burdens on small businesses, all of these things." He goes, "But I really need some constituent calls." And I'm like, "Yeah, we can do that." Reach out to the farmers in his district. But I come back to that. That's key. Notice, even with him being aligned philosophically with what we were doing, and his boss being aligned philosophically with what we were doing, his boss is only going to take action if they hear from constituents. And they only need to hear from 4, 5, or 6 of them. Not 1,000, but just something that says the people back home in our district care about this too.
Perfect. Well, that's heartening, I'll tell you, because we can do that.
Absolutely. And I will say that the last few times that I called on a national issue, and maybe it was after hours and I left a voicemail, both times I left a voicemail, I got a call back and had a conversation with a staffer who was like, "Hey, I wanted to follow up on this thing." And so I was really surprised, but pleasantly so.
Awesome.
And that's fantastic. And that will happen. And I want to also encourage people that it's okay if it doesn't. So the very first, I'd never called a legislator before I started FARFA. And when all this blew up 19 years ago, I sent a letter off to my state rep, and I got back one of those wonderful form letters that clearly, completely missed the point. Like, you read the letter and you're like, "Dude, did you even think about what I wrote you?" And I was really annoyed, and I put it aside and started doing other work. And then I came back, I'm going to call them. Like, I am not letting them get away with this. And I picked up the phone and I called, and the chief of staff happened to be the one to answer. And I introduced myself and I said, "I sent you all a letter about this animal ID issue a few weeks ago." And she goes, "What was your name again?" I'm like, "Judith McGeary." And she goes, "I'm sorry." She goes, "I owe you an apology. I've been meaning to reach back out to you." And I went, That wasn't what I expected. She goes, yours was the first letter we got. So we asked the agency and we basically regurgitated their answer. It sounded reasonable to us. She goes, I kept getting calls on this. And I started digging a bit more. And you're right, this doesn't add up and something's wrong. And we'd like to talk with you more about it. So it doesn't always work. That first phone call is, or first letter isn't always magic. Keep at it, keep working it. Build that relationship, get to where they're listening to you. And sometimes that takes time.
Well, and continued effort in the direction we want to go is the only way that we get there. So you keep moving. I was having the vision of, you've seen that little meme where there's a diamonds in this mine and there's a guy on the bottom and he's got the pickaxe and he's going and going, and the one guy at the top, he has already turned around, like he gave up, and the guy on the bottom kept going, and it was just a moment more of effort and struggle and of swinging that pick and moving in that direction. And then the one who gave the effort receives the diamonds. Like when you continue, and you know what, sometimes it is hard work and sometimes it is frustrating, sometimes it is annoying, but it's always worth it. And if we continue to move in the direction of what we're wanting with this attitude and knowing that things are working out for us, they just really are. If we're sitting here living and breathing right now, things are working out for you, just so you know. So anyway, I love it. That's what we're doing. Keep going.
I actually haven't seen that meme. I love that. Send it to me, please. I need it. I think I need to post it. And I'll share it in somewhat starker terms because this is me. But one of the first people I ever listened to when I started FARFA, without knowing, I hadn't done lobbying, I hadn't done advocacy, but I got to listen to Richard Harwood, one of the leading thought people, thoughts and activists, not just thinkers, but on civic engagement. And he was talking about the form letters. He was the first one that introduced me to this issue of the problems with the form letters. And he's like, they're good for building your email list. They're good for fundraising. He goes, they're absolutely fantastic for, like the end of the world is coming if we don't do X, or everything will just be better if we elect so-and-so. These are great ways to raise funds from people. He goes, but they're not true. No one piece is going to sink us and no one piece is going to win it. He goes, if you're going to be honest with people, if you are going to really work to change the system, then you have to say that it took us several decades to get where we are now, to get the system as screwed up as it is now. And it is going to take a decade or two of dedicated, serious work to turn it around. And every step along the way, every win, that first little tiny cottage foods bill in 2011 deserved celebration. So it's not that it's all or nothing. We celebrate each win along the way and recognize that it's going to take time and a lot of work along the way, because our get big or get out agribusiness system started in the 50s, 1950s. May have to spell that out for some of the younger people. We are 60, 70 years into a system that was designed to promote large scale, chemically heavy, consolidated agriculture. That doesn't get turned around in a legislative session. We get started, we start moving it, but it's going to take a lot of work.
I didn't realize when we started following FARFA and then participating that you had been doing this 19 years. But after being at several lobby days with you in a row and just how organized and prepared you are and how that empowers the people that are showing up to walk the halls and to have these conversations. Now I'm just like, of course she's been doing this 19 years. That's one of the things that I appreciate so much about participating with you is that I know you're not going to send me into any office without knowing exactly what we're doing, exactly what the situation is, what are the options, how do we talk about it, and being that prepared. I didn't have to come prepared. You were there to prepare me. So I want folks, if they're like, oh man, I'd love to do that, but I don't know how to talk to people. You're going to be so empowered to do this if you join the FARFA team.
I love hearing that. It means a lot because it's the way we do achieve success over those years is by more and more and more people being empowered like that. More people, farmers and consumers, finding their voices and learning how to use them effectively and feeling empowered to keep using them, to not go, oh, it didn't go my way this time, I'm going to give up because it's hopeless because the system's rigged. Like that hopelessness, that the sense of defeat is our biggest enemy. It needs to be all of these farmers, the people who want healthy food, the people who want to buy local, the people who want to see, vibrant rural communities again, finding their voices and standing their ground and saying, you are going to listen. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep doing this because you are going to hear me.
Amen to that.
Amen. And that's how we do it. And we're all here together, and you are here supporting us, and we are here supporting you, supporting farmers, because it is so, so important.
I would like your assessment on where we are with the Farm Bill, and what do you think's going to happen? If it's going to just, somebody's just going to burn it and we're going to start over, what's going to happen?
Oh, you had to go from my wonderful, inspiring moment to Groundhog Day. It's Groundhog Day.
This is a roller coaster part. We're gonna get back up to the inspired part at the end.
We are not going to end on Groundhog Day.
No, I promise.
I don't know. And I'm sorry, but I think anybody who tells you that they can predict what the heck is going to happen with the federal government right now is selling you a bridge. The most likely thing, the track that they are talking about is doing what they're terming is a skinny farm bill, which looks at basically the agricultural side of the farm bill and leaves out all of the nutrition and food programs, because so much of the nutrition and food programs got dealt with, i.e. had their funding cut in the large reconciliation bill earlier this year. And what shape that skinny farm bill, what's in it? Again, we know agribusiness is trying to put in this manufacturer pesticide liability protection. They're trying to put in a provision that would block any local or state laws on food production that affect other states. So any rules about the standards that people in one state want to hold to would be abolished. There's good things we're trying to get in, our reforms on meat processing regulations to help small-scale meat processors, reforms of what's known as the checkoff bills, the programs that tax farmers to put on things like beef, it's what's for dinner. This is year 3 of attempting to pass a farm bill. They have never gone this long since the original farm bill, with not passing a renewed farm bill on the 5-year anniversary of the previous one. So they've lost a year before. Farm bills have slipped by a year, but never by 3. So
when that happens, does that mean that the old farm bill, the one from 3 years ago, is still that one is just in effect until a new one takes its place? What does that mean?
Well, what they have to do is they have to keep passing farm bill extensions, because actually the way the farm bill's written, it literally lapses at the end of the 5 years and would resort to an old 1930s version, which would get rid of the entire modern subsidy system and replace it with.
I'm like, that sounds good.
There's some things that wouldn't be terrible. Having said that, it's too dramatic and sudden of a shift. I mean, there are actually many ways that 1930s bill is better than what we have now, but shifting overnight to it would be disastrous. I mean, that's whatever you think of the 1930s policies, just completely upending everything in one month is not a good plan. And so what they do is they keep passing these extensions, and the extensions sometimes sort of tweak certain provisions or affect funding. And some of the programs rely then on year-to-year funding, and it becomes a whole appropriations question. It's really messy. There's not one answer as to what happens when they don't pass a farm bill on time.
And the more confusing it is, the better for all the bad players.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, even the big guys don't particularly like it in terms of they want certainty. It's hard for them to do economic planning Now they can afford to absorb it. It's not disastrous for them, but it's not helpful when you're dealing with something like agriculture to have 1-year timelines for programs, because that's not how land use and land management work.
That makes sense. Okay, sister, before I ask my final-ish questions, one normally turns into two, but do you have anything that you wanted to ask? I know I normally hog the mic.
No, I think I'm loving where we're going and what we've talked about so far. I'm interested in your last question, sister.
Okay. All right, Judith. So one of our goals as Texas Soil Sisters is to foster the local food system and to invite other people to join us. So I want you to put your attorney hat back on, and we're going to have some closing arguments to sway the listeners to actively participate or support their local food system. And maybe like, what does that look like for people to fully participate?
To fully participate, so there's a whole list of actions for people, and the more of these that you do, think of it as comparable to eating a healthy diet. When you add in, grass-fed meat and broccoli sprouts, you're doing good stuff. When you change your entire plate and your snacking habits and what you drink and everything else, even better. And the effects are synergistic. They're not just additive, they multiply. So there's a whole list of things you can do to participate in the local food system. And the more of them you do, the better it is. And they interact in ways that multiply your effort. And so as we've said, the first one is start by buying local. Start by buying from independent producers. If there's a small mom and pop grocer, go there too. I mean, patronize, put your money into businesses that are independent from the large scale conventional system and that you aren't going to find in the aisles of the mainstream grocery stores. Use it on the highest quality food you can find. Grass-fed meats, grass-fed dairy, pastured eggs, organic produce, unprocessed foods. You're not only supporting and making sure that the greatest amount of your dollars goes back to those farmers, you're helping your own health. You're getting the highest nutritional value and lower residues. As contaminated as our water and air are, no one can promise you that there's absolutely no residues on even the most organic of products because it's in our air and our water now. But it's certainly a lot lower, massively lower than unconventional. And then get engaged, and then let's multiply that effect. Encourage your family, talk with your community, talk with your coworkers, get them buying local, talk with them about the benefits you've seen, because then they'll start spending their dollars that way. And then layer in civic engagement. I'm not talking about politics. You don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat or a Libertarian or a Green, whatever. In fact, I really don't care what you are on any of those. This isn't politics, it's civic engagement. Develop this relationship with your local elected officials or your state elected officials or your Congress members. Pick where you want to, because any of those are impactful. So pick what feels comfortable to you. A lot of our work is state, and that's where I often see the biggest bang for your buck in return for being involved. But we see huge changes with people involved with their local communities and with Congress. And it's that pick up the phone and call. And one of the great things you will gain from that is not only helping that food that is nourishing you become more available and more accessible and greater opportunities for you to choose what you're buying, but it's actually just genuinely, and I'm not acting here, I don't sound at all like an attorney. So this is so touchy-feely and so not an attorney. But you know what? It feels great to get involved and see the system work. And to start realizing that those people in those offices are human beings like you. And you may disagree with them on a lot of things. In fact, some of the funnest moments are when you're talking to somebody who you can pretty much guess, would probably disagree with you pretty stringently on some other things. And you can find that common ground around food. And you can see that shift and you can make that human connection. Because that's too rare right now. That is way too rare. And so it's this wonderful thing where you are helping your own health, you are helping the economic situation of your community, you're helping the environment, and you are building these relationships that I truly believe have the potential not only to change our food system, which is a huge thing in and of itself. I mean, if we change our food system, the impact we could have is immense. And I also believe that the impact of it could go even further than the question of our land and our food, and really impact how our system works. And that is, being part of that and that community is amazing.
It is amazing. And we feel every bit of what you said in attendance at the Southern Family Farmers and Food Systems Conference.
Absolutely.
I mean, what an amazing event. And, you know, Crystal and I, when we got there, and this is only our third year to go, and it already feels like a family reunion when we get there. And being in the exhibit hall and knowing that everything that a farmer needs to be successful, a market gardener or a farmer or a rancher, they're in that room. The knowledge, the network, the resources, they're all right there. So how many years ago did y'all kick off this conference?
So the first conference that FARFA held by itself was 19 years ago. Next year will be our 20th anniversary.
Dang, you really kicked it off.
We really kicked it off. And we joined with the Small Producers Initiative on this joint conference in 2019. So it's been building for a while, and being partners with them has been wonderful. First of all, the folks over at SBI are just awesome. And it's enabled us to really build this, what you were just describing, this really full, complete conference. Ours was almost entirely policy, which was vital, and it was a gap in what was being offered. But now what we do is people can come and they can choose, do they learn how to grow crops? Do they learn about livestock? Do they learn about marketing? Are there some niche or homesteader topics? And the policy, and it brings it all together. And I'm so grateful that this partnership has enabled us to have that kind of an event.
Well, and this is the most generous community I think I've ever been a part of. And by generous, it's giving of time and of information and sharing experience and listening to what you're going through. And it's just been, it's so wonderful. And to walk around there and to know that you are connecting with people who are moving in the direction that you're moving. Like, we are doing this. Everyone just relax. We hold each other hug each other when we cry, when we experience, struggles, and then we're there cheering when wonderful things happen. And we are here together and moving in the direction of, healthy food, a healthy planet, and really taking care of our communities and letting that be part of the policy of our country.
So well said.
Well, Judith, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom and inspiring our listeners to become activists in our Texas farming and ranching community. Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you think is important to round out this conversation?
Oh, you covered a lot of ground. You guys are good at this. I think actually I'll end it by issuing an invitation. Again, we mentioned that we'll be spending this next year, talking with folks about what we need to be working on. So I just want to issue the invitation to people to get involved in that conversation with us. You can contact us through the website. Obviously, becoming a member is wonderful, but whether you do or not, we want to hear from people so that we really are able to build our work around what makes a difference for people, for the consumers, for the farmers who are trying to build a better system. So please engage with us and communicate and reach out to us. We want to hear from you.
Highly recommend.
That's right. 10/10 would recommend.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all so much for hanging out.
Connect with the Soil Sisters at txsoilsisters.co. Submit questions, guest or show ideas, and sponsorship inquiries. The Soil Sisters podcast was created and produced by Joanna Nuding. Editing and sound design are in the capable hands of the PodConnects Podcast Network.